Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're exploring a topic that, well, might make some people blush. Cannabis and sex.
Yeah.
Specifically, the potential of cannabis to enhance sexual experiences and maybe even, help people climax.
Interesting.
We've got some interesting research and some expert opinions to dig into.
Yeah, for sure. This is a hot topic, one that's generating a lot of buzz.
Right.
Especially with all this anecdotal evidence that's suggesting cannabis could lead to more intense and pleasurable orgasms.
Okay, so we're not shying away from any details here.
Nope.
We are diving deep into the science and exploring how cannabis might actually impact the ability to climax.
Yeah, but one of the key things to understand is how cannabis interacts with our endocannabinoid system.
Okay.
Which plays a role in regulating everything from mood and stress to pleasure and sensation.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Can you break down that endocannabinoid system thing for me? I mean, I'm all for exploring pleasure, but I need a little science to ground me.
Absolutely. Think of it as a network of receptors throughout your body that respond to compounds called cannabinoids, which are found naturally in cannabis.
Okay.
So when you consume cannabis, these cannabinoids bind to those receptors.
Right.
And that's where the magic, or should I say the climax, potentially happens.
Okay, so cannabis is like a key that unlocks this pleasure system in our bodies.
Exactly. And when it comes to climaxing, some research suggests that cannabis can amplify those sensations, making them more intense, and even leading to multiple orgasms for some people.
Multiple orgasms?
Yeah.
Okay, now you've got my attention. But how does that actually work? Is it all about feeling more relaxed and in the moment?
Relaxation definitely plays a role. Cannabis can help reduce anxiety and inhibitions, allowing people to let go and fully experience those pleasurable sensations. But it also seems to enhance sensitivity to touch, making everything feel more heightened.
Yeah, I can imagine that would make a big difference, especially when it comes to reaching that, peak moment.
Sure.
But, we need to be responsible here.
Of course.
Not everyone reacts to cannabis the same way.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, individual responses can vary greatly.
Yeah.
What works for one person might not work for another, and some people might even experience negative effects like anxiety or paranoia.
So self-awareness and responsible use are key, especially when we're talking about something as intimate as sex.
Totally agree.
We'll definitely dig into those aspects a bit later.
Sounds good.
But first, I'm curious about the science behind those heightened sensations.
Okay.
What's going on in our brains and bodies when cannabis and climaxing collide?
Well, when we climax, our brains release a flood of dopamine and other feel-good chemicals.
Right.
And what's interesting is that cannabis seems to amplify this response.
Okay.
Potentially by increasing the amount of dopamine released.
Got it.
Or by making our brains more sensitive to it.
So cannabis is like turning up the volume on those pleasure signals.
Exactly. And that's why some people report feeling more intense and euphoric orgasms when they use cannabis.
Interesting.
There's also evidence that cannabis can increase blood flow to the genitals, which can enhance sensitivity and arousal.
Wow. So it's like a multi-pronged approach to pleasure.
Yeah.
But let's get back to that point about responsible use.
Sure.
What are some things listeners should keep in mind if they're considering exploring cannabis in the bedroom, especially when it comes to climaxing?
First and foremost, it's about knowing your own body and how you react to cannabis.
Okay.
Start low and slow with dosage and be patient. It can take some experimentation to find the sweet spot where you feel relaxed and enhanced, but not overwhelmed or anxious.
And what about communication with your partner? That seems pretty crucial, especially in this context.
Absolutely. Open and honest communication is essential.
Yeah.
Talk about your expectations, boundaries, and any concerns you might have. Make sure you're both on the same page and feeling comfortable before things get well heated.
Right, because even if cannabis can make the experience more intense, it's not a magic solution to any underlying relationship issues or personal anxieties.
Exactly. It's important to remember that cannabis is a tool, not a cure-all.
Yeah.
And like any tool, it needs to be used responsibly and with awareness.
Now, I know we've talked a lot about the positive effects.
Yeah.
But are there any potential downsides or risks associated with using cannabis for this purpose?
There are a few things to be aware of. As we mentioned earlier, some people experience increased anxiety or paranoia with cannabis.
Right.
Which can definitely put a damper on things in the bedroom.
And I imagine that could be especially true if you're already feeling nervous or self-conscious about sex.
You're exactly right. It's also important to note that cannabis can interact with certain medications.
Oh, right.
So if you're taking any prescription drugs, it's essential to talk to your doctor before using cannabis.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It's always better to err on the side of caution and get professional advice if you have any concerns.
And lastly, I want to emphasize that while there's growing anecdotal evidence about the potential benefits of cannabis for sexual experiences, more research is needed to fully understand its effects, especially long-term effects.
Okay, so while the early signs are exciting, we still need more science to back it up.
Right, and until we have more definitive answers, it's important to approach this with an open mind, but also a healthy dose of skepticism.
So informed exploration is key, and always listening to your body and your partner.
Exactly.
This has been a fascinating discussion so far, and I'm curious to hear your final thoughts on what this all means for the future of intimacy and pleasure.
Well, it's fascinating to think about how cannabis could potentially reshape our views on sexuality and pleasure.
Yeah.
As we become more open to exploring different ways to enhance our experiences.
Right.
Cannabis might become a more accepted and integrated part of intimate lives.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if this could lead to more open conversations about pleasure in general.
Sure.
And a deeper understanding of our own bodies and desires.
Absolutely. It could challenge traditional taboos and encourage people to explore their sexuality in new and exciting ways.
Yeah.
But it's also important to approach this with a sense of responsibility and awareness.
Right.
Ensuring that everyone involved feels safe and respected.
So as with any exploration of pleasure, consent, communication, and respect remain paramount.
Exactly. And as we learn more about the potential benefits and risks of cannabis in this context, it will be crucial to share that knowledge responsibly and empower individuals to make informed decisions about their own bodies and experiences.
Well, this has been a truly enlightening deep dive. We've explored the science behind cannabis and climaxing, delved into the potential benefits and risks, and even pondered the future of intimacy in a world where cannabis might play a more prominent role.
It's been a pleasure exploring this fascinating topic with you.
Likewise.
Hopefully our listeners feel empowered to have open and honest conversations about their own desires and to approach this subject with a sense of curiosity, respect, and responsibility.
And if this deep dive has sparked your interest, we encourage you to explore the resources we've mentioned and to continue the conversation on our social media platforms.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences.
For sure.
Until next time, happy exploring.